I'd like to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is open to the press and public. The meeting is being broadcast live, and a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings, but I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raise hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And may I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your camera for the duration of the meeting. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking, and please do not interrupt discussions until you have notified of your intention to speak and you have been invited to do so. Okay, right, moving on to the agenda. Agenda item number 1 is welcome and apologies. Niall, do we have any apologies, please?
I haven't received any apologies, Chair.
We do have apologies from Councillor Gaynor-James.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations with regards to the item we are scrutinising today, please? No? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting 9th of May 24. Members, a reminder that these are the minutes of the meeting of the Prosperous ONS Committee prior to reconfiguration of committees. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, the minutes of the meeting 11th of July 24. Members, a reminder that these are the minutes of the meeting of the previous meeting where the committee scrutinised the update on recommendations and the update on external referrals. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is the action sheet. Rebecca, please could you run through the action sheet?
Thank you, Chair. So, as members will be aware, I have now sent you the information with regards to actions 3 and 4 on the action sheet. And as soon as I have the information on the first and second actions listed on the action sheet, I will circulate that to the committee as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Beck. Agenda item 6, employability services. Before we commence discussions, I would like to welcome Councillor Joanne Gordon, Executive Member of Economy and Skills, Beth McPherson, Head of Community and Wellbeing, and Angela Price, Group Leader, Skills Development, Employability and ACL. On behalf of the committee, I would like to express our thanks to Angela and to Anthony for facilitating a visit to the Pantech House Employability Hub last Wednesday, and a special thanks to the officers and participants who willingly engaged with us during the visit. It was a very informative visit that helped us in preparing for today's scrutiny activity. I will now hand you over to Beth and Councillor Gordon to give you a very brief introduction to the report before we commence questioning. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chair, and morning members, and thank you, Chair, for the invite and opportunity to attend today. So, a key principle in delivering our economy and skills strategy is investment in people. Our employability and skills offer is personalised to each individual, identifying and removing barriers to enable entry into employment or moving closer to work through work-related activities such as volunteering. Our employability and skills team work to support our young people into vying to be ambitious and have high aspirations, and to support our residents from all backgrounds into high quality and sustainable employment. I look forward to your comments on the performance of the service to provide focused programmes to enable our residents to return to the world of work or to increase skills levels to aid career progression. The committee's recommendations on future delivery options will be considered to inform programme delivery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gordon.
Morning all. Okay, so I'll take you through quickly the main points of the report. As outlined in 2.1, the main purpose really is to provide an overview of our current employment and skills provision within the borough, look at performance to date, and in particular draw areas of options around our future delivery in terms of where we can be more focused and deliver greatest impact for the benefit of our Torfaen economy and the residents. As a team, we support residents throughout their individual journey, as Joe has alluded to, in terms of employment, operating very much a person-centred approach to that programme, looking to remove barriers to employment, education and training through a wide range of interventions, which are expanded on within the report. There is also a critical link to the business community and industry to ensure that recruitment and skills requirements inform what is required from them within the economy, and that our support services align to that. This includes understanding both the local needs and regional gaps, demands and growth areas, both of which are covered within the report. Torfaen Council is helping our residents untangle quite a complicated landscape. Quite often there is a breadth of provision available within the employability landscape. Within Torfaen Council, we've established what is called Torfaen Works, essentially providing a single front door to our employability services. That's been established in the last 2 years and essentially means that anybody requiring any level of employment or skills support or information comes through that single front door, and then the teams behind the scenes do the work to determine which intervention best supports the need of the individual or the business. The team work extensively with a range of partners, including DWP, Careers Wales and Further Education, to ensure again that we minimise duplication within the provision available across the borough, and that we are continually looking at how do we develop and grow that offer to best meet local needs. The Council's employment and skills provision is currently delivered primarily through external funding, and that is primarily through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Welsh Government Communities for Work Plus currently, both of which are funded up until March 2025, with further information awaited in terms of continuation beyond that period. The availability of external funding has enabled the team to introduce an extensive offer to support residents. This report outlines that support and the associated outcomes achieved and considerations to areas of focus and impact moving forward. It's important for us to build a future offer that will deliver impact and that ultimately the best support the economy of Torfaen and the residents it employs. Section 4 of the report begins by outlining the current delivery approach of Torfaen County Borough Council in terms of employment and skills services, before presenting a summary of current performance measures and the most up-to-date data sets relating to the economic activity within the borough. It outlines how those current programmes are addressing the challenges aligned with those data sets, and finally sets out some recommendations for future delivery priorities. Within our programmes, our mentors support the participants through every step of their employment journey, developing their skills and knowledge of job-seeking process. Each individual is supported, receives an individual action plan, and an important element with any support that we need to be considering is about building the individual's resilience and ensure that we support them to do so. So not to do for them, but to support them to ensure that moving forward, should they re-enter the system, the level of support that they require is reduced, or more favourably, that they receive the support that they need and we don't see them re-enter because they're able to better access employment self-sufficiently. 4.5 and 4.6 outlines the approach and location of our current delivery, which does indicate just the breadth of our current services, especially within local communities. In alignment with the community's approach and the associated community and wellbeing strategy, there is an opportunity going forward to explore the data alongside local intelligence to ensure that that offer we provide by the team is aligned to that local place-based priorities and thinking, and the outreach provision aligning to available resource, need and take-up and outcomes, so we become more focused and targeted in the approach. So Torfaen Works is made up, as we've said, about funded. Torfaen Works so far has engaged 2,971 residents in the last 2 years, This includes our support to adults, young people and pre-16 support, which the latter is primarily focused around those not in education, training or employment. And within 14.12 outlines the breadth of activity in a little bit more detail in terms of the sport to young people specifically, just for your information. The data presented in Table 1 provides a summary of participants' status on entry to Torfaen works covering the period 23-24 to the current time, and the majority of those supported are those who are unemployed and seeking work, those without a disability and long-term health conditions, and skilled at a level 2 and below. I'm sure you've had time to have a look at those data sets. 4.16 presents the outcomes achieved and is represented as actuals, not cumulative figures, which is outlined in the text. So can we just note the error there? To date, 451 participants have secured employment, 153 are work experience or volunteering supported employment opportunity, and over 1,000 people achieving a qualification. So in terms of our options for future delivery, there's one there set out around performance measures, and definitely the opportunity going forward to establish measures that better demonstrate impact with the associated intervention, so that we don't simply record the immediate activity, but we look around the long-term impact of that. So if we're delivering a qualification, how is that sort of supported an individual to either gain employment, for example, or to progress within work to sort of establish a better level of income for that individual. So there's opportunities to do that across the breadth of support that we provide. Table 3 of the report outlines the economic status of Torfaen residents, and whilst the numbers of both economically active and inactive are comparable to the Welsh and UK average, Table 4 below also highlights the percentage of residents who are economically inactive as a result of being long-term sick, and that is significantly higher than the Welsh and the national average, and many of those do not wish to work, so it does present a challenge in terms of how we move that cohort closer to the labour market. I'll try to keep this brief, sorry, but the above exemplifies the need for a bespoke specialist employability service which can meet the complex needs of these groups, and that they present people who are economically inactive for a variety of complex reasons, and many will require flexibility and adjustment from employers to help them rejoin the workforce. So it's not just about the support that we can put in place, but it's actually then how you integrate them and work with industry to make sure that that's a positive outcome for both. 4.26 and 4.27 outlines the level and extent of support offered, and as mentioned, this can be complex and may not always lead to an employment outcome for the individual. So in terms of the options relating to that, we can continue to provide a core employment support offer to residents to access better jobs and help boost productive job seeking. This will include facilitation of work placements and volunteering, and this is in line with business feedback that advocates a good work ethic and aptitude as key employability requirements. So not simply looking at the skills and qualifications, but that attitude to work. There is also an opportunity the team can continue to provide support to this specific cohort around long-term unemployed, assisting those wishing to work and to find and sustain employment and consider building their skills. Again, I think this is an opportunity where we can align to the community and wellbeing strategy and how we draw on support that goes beyond the immediate team in terms of other services, but also actually provision that's available and delivered within the communities themselves to support some of that activity. Another important area of focus is the skills levels of Torfaen population. So Table 5 denotes the current skills levels of our population. We will see that there's been an improvement picture around those achieving level 2 qualifications, and that's set out within our employment and skills strategy. So we are looking and moving towards realising that ambition. Where we are perhaps not best represented is at that level 3 and level 4 respectively. So a focus on raising qualification levels will support residents in potentially accessing better skilled and better paid employment opportunities and raising local disposable income levels for households. Further to that opportunity, one of the other areas we don't currently engage extensively is around schools to raise awareness of employment and career opportunities. There is an opportunity to do more within this space around a coordinated programme of support, very much working with existing partners that do elements of this activity and with businesses And this was something that featured very heavily and was advocated by the Strategic Economic Forum last week when we spoke with them. So definitely an opportunity for consideration. The report then goes on to talk about the Cardiff Capital Region and outlines the priority sectors there and how Torfaen residents are represented within that sector. I think the only point to note is the report doesn't highlight the entry level at which Torfaen residents are entering those sectors. So it doesn't give us the distinction between those higher end employment opportunities versus entry level, which is again one of the options moving forward. So under skills and aspiration, options for future delivery are around to continue our level 2 provision, working towards that, but actually then looking at how we can develop pathways and work with further education to ensure a better progression into level 3 and level 4, and to develop that aspiration piece with schools. And then just very quickly in terms of the financial implications, as I spoke about, we're primarily dependent on 2 primary sources of funding, both of which are currently due to end in March 2025. So there will be a piece of work to determine how can we establish a core provision that ensures we do continue to deliver around this agenda. And then obviously if funding is forthcoming from either of those sources or any alternatives, how we then build additionality into our programmes going forward. In terms of risk, the main one there is around, apologies, they do not have in place some of the performance measures to measure the impact. So I think there's more work we can do there, which would help our work become more targeted. So actually our activity is focused on where we can have the greatest impact for both the economy and the residents. And should funding not be forthcoming, then we would obviously look at a team in terms of how we reduce the number of cohorts that we support. But again, that's back to then, where do we best deliver greatest impact? So it outlines the activity following scrutiny, and then section 8 is obviously the questions to yourselves, which are the basis of today. Sorry, not very quick, but like I said, it was quite a lengthy report, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Beth. Yes, we'll move on to members' questions now. And the first part of the questioning will be on service provision. Starting with question number 1, which is the relevant paragraph 3.2, which is aligned to the key sectors within the Cardiff Capital Region. How are we working with CCR in developing our provision, and what support does CCR provide, please?
So I think in terms of the work with the CCR, I think there has been some level of engagement, but there is definitely an opportunity to strengthen that going forward. So the CCR will be very focused on that very high-end level of attainment within these growth and demand sectors, sort of your level 3, 4 in particular. So they do have programmes like your graduate programmes, whereby local businesses can access a graduate opportunity to work within these sectors. I think the work that we need to do going forward is how we better align our skills and training to ensure that progression and pathways in those growth and demand sectors. There is a piece of work ongoing at the moment as to whether we need to sort of revisit that regional skills strategy to make sure that that actually is the reality. There will be an element around aspiration, and ultimately we want our children to aspire to those higher end roles, but fundamentally we need to ensure that there is a core offer of employability linked to those that can benefit the whole of Torfaen. So, yeah, CCR offer, the graduate programmes, they're looking at how they better support apprenticeships, etc. I think the key link that we need to strengthen is that bridge and that pathway between sort of lower level qualifications into those higher ends. There's probably a piece of work as well where we talk about those future skills and actually unpicking that. What does that mean for our local business by way of supply chain? So if you take something like the Aberthaw opportunity, you know, that is in a different borough, it's quite far away from us in terms of people being able to access those future employment opportunities might be quite difficult. That's not to say that there couldn't be local supply chain opportunities that we can take advantage of, and therefore it's how we work with businesses and our residents to sort of mobilise and prepare for those kind of opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Moving on to question 2. Invite Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at 3.4 in the report, the statement, the Targeted Employment and Skills Support Service ensures access is available for the most vulnerable young people and adults. So the question is, how are we sort of ensuring that we're engaging with everyone who may need the employment and skills support? Have we got any monitoring and evaluation in place to meet that challenge? It seems to be quite a big challenge to get to the people who may be the most vulnerable. And they may not always come to us via referrals. So have you got any sort of monitoring, evaluation and possible outreach?
If I just pick up on perhaps the young people element, and then Andrew will be much better placed in terms of the wider provision. In terms of young people, in terms of targeting that support, I think that in one sense it's a slightly easier ask because they are known to our team. Within education, we obviously have a clear identification tool that identifies those that are at risk and the level of risk that they present, so they're actually able to provide a very targeted support and intervention. And that's not just themselves, but actually drawing on a wider range of partners. And that is very much monitored through a range of processes. So I think the young people is quite a comprehensive offer and quite robust in terms of its monitoring. In terms of the wider breadth, I know we do quite a lot, but Ange can expand on that.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, in terms of our, we do have a lot of targeted interventions and open referral systems in place for people that can self-refer, but we know that a lot of those individuals, it takes a lot of time to build up that trust. So we've got a lot of community outreach that takes place in a variety of centres, but then we also work internally with our social care partners. So we're currently doing a lot of work with care leavers and looked after children. But then some of the characteristics that we look for, and we try and support that audience more, is people that are socially isolated, have health conditions, mental health conditions. So we actively work with those partner agencies to ensure that we are getting the referrals at the right time from the right people. We have a lot of young people being referred to us as well, but for some people, it takes a lot of courage for them to actually ask for that help, and it takes us a lot of time sometimes. They will come to us and engage, and they will disengage, and then they will re-engage. But we've got a lot of support now with our RSL, so we're supporting vulnerable people that are at risk of losing their tenancy, who are in high levels of rent arrears. So, I mean, we've got one of our food bank that operates from our employment and skills shop in Cwmbran, and that was there to help remove that stigma for those that are most vulnerable and are at risk and at crisis. So they're obviously accessing the food banks for a particular reason. So once they come through the front door, it's not just they're going in for their food parcel, they're actually receiving more targeted intervention at the point of crisis. And we have a lot of our employment progression coaches actually situated and housed in the food banks within the local authority as well. So even though we want to actively target people, but we're trying to do it as discreetly as possible, as well as having open mechanisms for our social media campaigns where people can self-refer, through our adult community learning centres. There isn't anywhere really that we wouldn't take a referral from and try and match the intervention that is best placed for that individual. We've gone to, we advocate through DWP on their behalf. We've had people that are, at risk of losing their tenancy. We've done PIP assessments for individuals. So on a lot of occasions, we are meeting some of the most vulnerable of Torfaen residents. And it isn't always about employability and skills support. It's the much wider impact of what's happening on their life that is stopping progressing. And for some people, that will take a lot longer. So the team are very well rehearsed and very well skilled at identifying a person's initial barriers. But then, as Beth said, with the action plans, that will change over time once they get to trust the individual. So we then get to know, actually, there's a lot more going on in a person's life, which makes them even more vulnerable. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, largely, it's just, have we gotten any evaluation within the referral system so that we've got evidence coming back of the effectiveness?
So, yeah, everything the team...
It's a big ask, I know.
Yeah, no, everything the team do, what we're trying to do is establish better measures. So actually, if we're establishing outreach provision, if we are based in the libraries, if we're based in Blenavon, etc., we start to capture where those referrals are coming from, that we can quantify the volume, etc. And that's something we do need to analyse, especially, you know, if funding does become reduced. We, you know, it's back to that point about where do we best target our resource, where can we have the greatest impact. And actually, for those that can self-refer through a more traditional method, that we make that easy, isn't it? So actually, again, it's the most vulnerable we support in perhaps a more direct way. But that is all part of the measures that we're starting to build. You know, and again, it's about what role does the employment and skills team play, and where then do we draw on wider provision when we're looking at that community support and intervention, but that we operate in a similar space so that it's accessible to our residents. So yes, we are monitoring, we are measuring, and I think there is probably an opportunity to take that further going forward.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you both. Moving to question 3, and ask Councillor Nick Horler, please.
Good morning, both. 3.8. A place-based approach for employment skills and services within Torvine Works should make it easier for members, businesses, stakeholders to receive a quality advice, assistance and support from teams which are close to the community they serve. My question is, could you expand on that statement, please? Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, so our place-based approach is really around the data that we have available to us. So the data that has been presented within this report, we're able to take that down to a bit more granular level. So the economic inactivity, for example, we can break that down to a place-based approach so that we know that there may be higher levels of economic inactivity, for example, in Blenavon. So a lot more of our targeted provision would be in those areas. Again, with the low skills levels, we go down to that granular place-based approach, so we can see that there are pockets within Torvine that actually need more intervention, more outreach within those areas than some of the areas that there is a higher level of employment and lower levels of economic inactivity. So we do need a better detail in terms of the data that we've got, but we're very limited in terms of the data that the data that's been presented to you has come straight from NOMIS, and some of it is 2022, 2023. So we're always up against that. We haven't got current, up-to-date data sources, but we monitor NOMIS on a weekly, monthly basis, and if there are any changes, then we adapt that delivery. With we've got a community outreach bus that we've had in previously, and we take that really into the heart of certain communities, into schools, into certain schools, so that we're targeting those communities and those residents in a place that they trust as well. So it is really down to a lot of the data and the intelligence, and also referrals and ask from our local schools and other partners if they're aware of an area where there may be high levels of deprivation. Again, I go back to rent arrears, because we know that there are pockets of estates within Torvine where there are higher levels of rent arrears than in others. So it really is around that targeted provision and using the data that we've got available to us. Does that help?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Nick, thank you. On question 4, please, Councillor Steve Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Before I ask the question, I need to declare interest. I'm a board member on the Congress, and because food banks have been mentioned, I run a food bank from Thornhill Community Centre. The question I got is 3.9. The team works extensively with DWP, Career Wales, and our further education establishments, including Colla Gwent, in the delivery of services to residents. So the main part of the question is, are there any gaps in the partnership working that needs to be addressed?
I would say in terms of our employment support, it's currently probably well covered and well supported. I think potentially the risk going forward is some of the changes we're seeing in terms of policy, and that may then increase the number of individuals that require support. And obviously there is always a risk in terms of our dependency on external funding, that if that reduces, that may then in turn have an impact as well. We're not currently cited on that, and obviously we need to wait for that information. But I would say the current provision is good. I think there is probably an opportunity where we can work better and closer together to sort of just enrich that opportunity. For me, areas like skills development, the work with schools, etc. There's lots of good work happening. It's quite sporadic sometimes in terms of approach, and all of our resources are stretched. So therefore, if we can work better together in a more coordinated way, that probably allows us to deliver more. And I think, you know, and Ange can expand on this, we've got very good relationships with our further education providers, but again, there is probably that area of strengthening in terms of that progression of pathways to make sure that we don't just sort of stop at a level 2, we do explore actually where can we develop new learning opportunities that again are aligned to growth or demand sectors or where we struggle to recruit, but actually gives an individual that opportunity to progress. Earn better incomes. You know, that's ultimately what we need to do, isn't it? Is get more people into work, but actually having a higher degree of disposable income as well. So I think there's probably good working relationships with an opportunity to do more.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, and just to raise the point where we're responsive to current challenges, we've recently, the Employment and Skills team have recently offered support to local businesses, rather large local employers who have unfortunately gone into liquidation. The team respond rapidly and are able to offer that current workforce skills to as support rather to transition straight into another job, so they're not faced with the redundancy or, you know, losing their employment and having to look for work as well. But also around that's just a snippet, I think, of some of the partners that we work with. We've got very good relationships with our traineeship providers and our apprenticeship providers. So it is around offering support to people who are on work-based learning. We also do a lot within the local authority as well to support and upskill our own current staff. So we are quite reactive, and we're, you know, especially when there's a local business that is in trouble, then we want to be there to help the current workforce. And in terms of further education, is something that has been picked up. I think when some of the school children visited and took over the council for the day, one of the things that a lot of the school children wanted was to have some after-school provision around careers. So one of the things that we've put forward to that is to offer career clubs within secondary schools. And I know Beth has alluded to the Economic Strategic Forum that took place last week. And we're looking at ways of strengthening our work within schools and bringing Coleg Gwent in as well. So we work very closely with them within adult community learning. But Beth's right, there is a lot more that we can do in terms of strengthening that partnership with Coleg Gwent to progress people on from level 2s onto level 3s. And again, that work within the schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 5, Councillor Nicola.
4.2.4 states that you have over 16 drop-in centres across the borough. It's highly commendable that you have so many sites in the borough. My question is, how do you advertise and how do you promote those drop-in centres, please?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, we've got a very good social media presence. We boost our posts, we put stuff in all over social media. We work very closely with our comms team, who are very good at advocating on behalf of where we're working. The Torvine Works shop in Cwmbran, for example, that's very visible, but we had a big launch event around it. But the smaller ones, so the Work Club in Blenavon, for example, and some of the newer ones that have been set up in Abersycon, we rely and work very closely with councillors like yourselves and community representatives, work very closely with the schools. We've had information going, food banks, you name it, we'll try it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And I think there probably is an opportunity to strengthen that as well. I know we're doing quite a lot of work in some of the boroughs around sort of community-focused schools, etc. So, you know, again, it's advocating and using our partners and the work that's going on. I know Councillor Thomas is doing quite a lot down in Chantarnham around building that network and actually this strength in things like our community focused schools, because they know the parents, they know the residents, and can be a good conduit through then to make sure again our support is targeted where it's most needed.
Okay, thank you. We're on to question 6. I invite Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. My question relates to 4.37 in the report. The report indicates the majority of participants are aged 20 plus. Are there any plans to extend target support for older residents, particularly those over 50, who face unique challenges in re-entering the workforce?
I think our number is slightly different to yours, but it's 4.11, I think. So in terms of working with wider cohorts, I mean, we deal with adults, and that's the full breadth, and I know Andrew can come in now. I know sort of an area that DWP is starting to focus more on is that 50 plus. So again, I think it's about us having conversations to ensure that we're not duplicating any effort that might be happening there. If they have the resource and are looking to support in that space, then we can target our intervention elsewhere. But definitely that conversation around sort of changing employment opportunities, isn't it, and how you support that is probably something to look at. We've come up, but I'll hand over to Ange.
Yeah, I mean, we can provide, this data can be broken down. We do have a lot of an older cohort as well that we're supporting, either working or out of work. What we're finding now is we have a lot more self-referrals from people that are older who have retired, but are now wanting to go back into employment. I think one of the case studies we provided was somebody who was in his 60s who had left work due to ill health, but we helped him upskill, and now he's working, he wants to top his pension up. So there is more data that we can give you. Even though our, in previously with funding, we have done active targeted recruitment campaigns for over 50s. It's not something that we've done in this. This is kind of whatever your employment situation, we can help without being very targeted to the age characteristics. But we've definitely, I've seen on this programme, got a high proportion of older people who are either re-entering the workplace or who are looking to find employment, especially with the changes at the moment going on with universal credit. But if it's something that you're interested in, we can give you a more granular breakdown of the age categories, especially for the over 50s, if that's something you'd be interested in. Yeah? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 7 and 8 now is Councillor David Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm looking at 4.58 and then 4.59. So you could run through the various activities that are available. But just a quick question, really. What kind of adjustments and support are available to people with disability, whether that's physical disability or learning disability, to access the advice and support, such as easy read documents, large screens, things like that?
Yeah, thank you. So everybody that completes one of our enrolment forms, there are specific questions on there, and it's detailed within their action plan as well. So if somebody has got an additional learning need, then we can, or dyslexia, anything like that, or we've had people that have been, that are partially sighted, partially hearing. With the funding that we're able to use through the Shared Prosperity Fund, we provide everything in larger text. We've provided sign language, interpreters as well. So again, it's down to that individual, and whatever their barrier is, within means, then we'll try and make that journey into the programme and their entry into the programme as seamless as possible. You know, we've bought acetates for different classes if they're in a teaching environment to help with their reading. For our ESOL provision, we've had some learners who require interpreters to help them engage in our work-related activities. So again, it's very individual, and wherever possible, we use the funding that we've got to the best of our needs to remove those barriers to help them to engage.
Thank you, that's comprehensive, thank you. So shall I go on to the next one, Chair? Okay, so this was at 5.9. It was really just to get some feel. Sorry, let me go down. You mentioned about the employment offer, etc., but it was really getting each person's time. Obviously depends on their own circumstances and health conditions, but have you got some trends in terms of what's the usual length of programme and working with people? Are you seeing that sort of increase, decrease? How's it looking?
Yeah, sure. So with our health and wellbeing activity in particular, I think we alluded to it in the report, again, it's very individual. We have some people that come in and require a short, sharp intervention with a counsellor, which can take anything from up to 6 weeks, sometimes longer, but we have had people that have been on programme for a long time, and there are people on this programme, on Torfaen Works, who I have seen on previous programmes on European Social Fund, who are still requiring our level of support due to the, mental health is something that we're seeing a lot of a rise of, anxiety, self-esteem, but it's really hard, I suppose, to pin down the amount of time a person will require, really. I mean, I was talking to Beth about it a couple of days ago, so we've got a high caseload at the moment of working people, and the majority of working people, they know what they want in a way. They want to upskill, they're very more focused, I suppose, in a way, so they can be on programme for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but somebody who's economically inactive or very long-term unemployed and has been from the labour market for 6, 7 years plus, some of them can be on programme for 1 to 2 years. And I think that's a good thing about the programmes that we run through Torfaen Works. Shared Prosperity, it's not time limited. They haven't got to be on programme for 6 months and expect there to be an outcome. It's all done entirely at their own pace. So yes, some are on longer than the others, but it's hard for me to give you that actual short, sharp answer because everybody is so different.
Yeah, no problem. It's more sort of, when you talk about potentially targeting provision, it's what sort of information do you get in terms of is demand increasing in some areas or less in others? It's a statement. I'm not asking for a response.
And I think just as an indication when we were talking, wasn't it, a caseload where it's focused more on skills, you could have a sort of a caseload per person of 80 people on the books for any one mentor, versus perhaps somebody who's supported much more long-term unemployed, and that could be a caseload of 33. So it shows you, the kind of breadth. I think the only sort of point that's perhaps important to note is where people are on programme for those extensive periods of time. I think it's really important that we do consider that progression that that individual is making within that time. I think sometimes there is a risk of dependency if we're not careful in terms of, a clear outcome for that individual, which is the right thing for that person. Otherwise, you can be, like with everything else, we can pull people into service sometimes prematurely, or we hold on to them a little bit longer than we need to. So whilst that support needs to be there, and it needs to be the right support, I think it's for the right amount of time and the right circumstance, and that is something we need to be monitoring as well.
I'm sorry, just on that, Chair, I think I was explaining when you had the visit to Panteg. We've seen people that are still with us on programme, but actually they've taken a different role. They came into the programme as a participant who required that support, but actually 3 to 6 months later, yes, they're still accessing services, but they're actually giving their services back and they've become a mentor, especially within somewhere like Panteg House. So, yeah, their level of support is different, but they've actually become a lot more involved in the programme because they're providing that mentorship rather than requiring the needs of the service. Just to give you a bit of a working example.
Okay, thank you very much. We're on to question 9, by the Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. So this question relates to 4.61, I hope. The report emphasises collaboration with local businesses to inform skills development programmes. Can the Council provide specific examples of how local employers are directly shaping the training and employment services offered throughout Torfaen Works?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I think our work with Torfaen Strategic Economic Forum is key to this work, isn't it? And they've had shared prosperity funding to appoint a business development officer. So in the last year, they've been working with local businesses. First of all, they did a survey to see what the challenges were. Then they had a series of workshops to analyse that data and work out what the challenges were and identify which area they were going to focus on. And then more recently, they had an event where it was a breakfast event on training and skills, so local businesses, council representation, further education providers and Welsh Government representation were there to really dig down and work out what it is the challenges are in terms of skills and training, and that can then inform what we deliver in the future. But there's much work to be done. This, it's quite early days. There's still progress to be made, isn't there?
I think what was helpful is sometimes it does focus minds in terms of those key themes. You know, we talk a lot about sort of skills and qualifications. One of the things that came out of the session last week was about, aptitude for work, people being ready and able to work some of those core skills, what are missing in lots of cases, and actually that's something that we can be focusing our efforts on. Companies are often quite comfortable, they can teach the skills, the technical stuff. What they can't teach is that want to come in and work. They spoke extensively about young people and the need to be doing more at an earlier stage, and again, I know that's work that you focus on quite heavily. Just so that people, both children and parents, actually are really sighted on what's there within our, our units out in Torfaen. People think manufacturing, they have a perception that that's dirty line work, and actually there is 1,000,001 other roles within that. So how do we expose children to those opportunities to know what exists? So that was something they very heavily focused on. And I think one of the other themes was around defining what is Torfaen, what is our offer when we talk about employability. As one of the other key strands. So I think it was a really good, positive discussion. I agree there's more to be done around that. But we also then have employment liaison officers who work sort of more operationally and direct with some of the businesses then about specific needs that we can pick up.
Just quickly, Chair, before you move on, just want to touch on something quickly that Councillor Gordon just said about the business support officer. How is this business support officer reaching out to local businesses?
The business development officer recruited by Torfaen Strategic Economic Forum, they have their database of businesses that already attend their forums. But then they also, when they did the survey, they went out and visited businesses, so it was face-to-face. One-to-one meeting with the managing directors, etc., or maybe HR. That way.
Okay, thank you. We're on to question 10. Invite Councillor Stephen Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is 4.61 as well. This will include facilitation of work placements and volunteering. The question I got, are we always successful in securing placements? That's the first thing. And do we work with schools in developing their work experience programmes?
So Andrew, I'm sure, will come in on the supported employment and the placements elements, because I know the team have done quite a lot of work and been successful with that. In terms of the work experience offer within schools, I think that's something that's reduced over time, isn't it? It's traditionally been a Careers Wales service, so it's not something that we've explored directly. I think it comes back to the opportunity that we've got going forward around that perhaps needing to look and feel slightly different from your traditional Year 11 career conversation. That's almost too late in the process to sort of shift mindset. What we actually want is a much more creative, interactive programme. So there's opportunities, for example, to bring in external providers who can deliver activities free of charge around STEM, but it aligns to work and to careers. So it's a practical tool. It can link to the curriculum, so it's not an additional ask of schools either, which I think is an important element. And we can call on businesses then, especially local businesses, to bring that to life. So you've got the skills, you've got the curriculum, and then you've got the real life experiences. So I think there is definitely an opportunity for us to expand that provision that then takes it beyond a traditional career advice. And then that may lead to opportunities around work experience, isn't it, if you've got more businesses naturally engaged. But that experience is a meaningful experience as well, isn't it, that you don't go in and make tea for a week. I think it has to be a real exposure to the world of work. But again, that's based as well on resources available to do it.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
May I come in with a little supplementary on this? It was really just to ask is, does the council take a full part in offering work placement? Obviously, the major employer, because, you know, if we're asking the people to do it, we should be doing it ourselves, and I'm not sure how well we do.
Yeah, thank you, and it's a great question. And I'm pleased to say they are very open to it. We've placed a lot of people through our Torfaen Works programme, either on work experience, volunteering placements, and more recently through our shared prosperity funding. We've got a scheme called Success Plus, which we actually, slightly like the old Jobs Growth Wales, where we place one of our participants with a local employer and we pay their wages for up to 6 months, for up to 37 hours a week. That is open to all businesses, but more recently the local authority have come on board, and the departments and heads of service and strategic directors have been very proactive and very open to us placing people within the local authority. I think we've got 18 that have been on placement within the council at the moment. The majority have gone into employment either within the council or within the post that they were actually employed to do, I suppose. And the slight few that haven't, they've actually gone and secured employment outside the local authority. So, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dave Thomas.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair, before I ask the question that I got here, just touching on what you just said then, what's the age range of these individuals that are on placement with the council?
Anything from 16 plus. I think the majority are 18 plus, to be honest. We have had a couple of youngsters that have been placed within the Inspire Cafe up on floor 4. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're on to question 11, and it's Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. This question relates to 4.74. The report highlights that nearly 60% of participants have qualifications below level 2. What steps are being taken to improve access to higher level qualifications and ensure these individuals can progress beyond basic skills?
So I think probably we haven't done an extensive amount. I know Ange and the team have started to look at that sort of progression and pathway, and have done some sort of specific examples around childcare and getting people into those levels. For me, I think this is one of the recommendations within the report in terms of the need for us to better understand how do we ensure that progression. And we can't do that independently. There has to be the right learning pathways in place to sort of support that progression. You know, that's quite a complicated landscape sometimes in terms of availability of courses, etc., which is why the links with further education are so important. But they are engaged, isn't it? And we are having those conversations. So for me, I think this is a recommendation in terms of an area of development going forward, as opposed to something we've extensively done at this point in time. But it will become more important because obviously there's two elements for me. One is around that aspiration for young people. So if we're saying actually aspire for those opportunities, we have to make sure the pathway is there and it works. And then for those people who are already working, isn't it, that continual opportunity to grow. So something we're not currently, I would say, heavily doing, but something I think we need to be considering if skill progression is a priority for the council.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add on to that, when we were talking about the CCR and the priority sectors earlier, and this is linked to the level 2 qualifications, you'll see on the table at 4.41 the priority sectors for employment representation within CCR. We offer a lot of qualifications at level 2 and some at level 3 across those industries. So we are there at some point, but there is a lot further for us to be able to do. But in terms of the health and social care, the childcare, we offer level 2s and level 3s in the childcare sectors, which are now very heavily enrolled to get on for Torfaen Works and for adult community learning. And again, the creative sector, which is one of the priority sectors for CCR, we've just gone out through the Shared Prosperity Fund, and we've just awarded a contract through across the regional skills to offer the creative sector opportunities within Torfaen. They're going to be at taster levels, but then there is opportunities then that we're forging with the colleges to ensure that anybody within the local area who takes up those opportunities within Torfaen with the creative sector that are based in Cardiff have got the opportunities then to go on to the level 2s and the level 3s locally. So there is a lot of work happening on the ground, like Beth said, and we are there some way, but there is definitely a lot more that we can do.
Okay, thank you. Question 12, which is relevant to paragraph 4.7.8. As a programme, the CCR team have launched initiatives to encourage more people to enter these sectors, including the Venture Graduate Scheme, which to date has had limited success in areas such as Torfaen, with 1 graduate placed out of the 211 total. Have we analysed why success of this programme has been very limited in Torfaen, please?
Probably not extensive analysis. I think at a recent meeting, CCR themselves recognised that currently there are challenges as to why that's not translating into sort of the northern valleys. Essentially, the majority of the graduates will have been placed in your city centres. That's what we're seeing. Drawing on my previous experience around the programme, I think sometimes local businesses within valley towns or valley areas have struggled to sort of see the benefit a graduate brings. You're having to pay for that graduate post, and if you haven't got a clear purpose or need, then they would rather pay another worker to come in. So I think sometimes there's recognition of what value a graduate can bring to programmes when it is a cost. So I think there is probably more work that they need to do. And again, I guess there's a question for me as well. It's not just about the number of graduate places, but actually where have those graduates come from as well? Again, are our young people in Torfaen becoming those graduates that then may wish to be employed locally as then take up those opportunities? So I think there's probably recognition from the City Deal that that is an area that they do need to focus on and understand better why we're not getting that traction and that take-up.
Okay, thank you very much. Going on from that, question 13, the CCR priority sectors. Is there any disparity between the growth sectors in the area and therefore supply or jobs against the demand for these types of jobs? Example, do the people presenting to our employability services want to work in such sectors?
So Ange will give the detail, but I think there's definitely... So I think we're very... Oh my God, my voice is going to go... I think we're very conscious that there's been lots of conversations around these demand sectors. Some of these would be very well represented in things like advanced manufacturing, construction, and foundational economy. I think some of those newer sectors around creative and green skills, etc., are less known across the board in terms of what do those jobs look like. So there's probably more work there. What we have started to do, back to the earlier question around monitoring, is actually tracking people through. So if they're coming in for the employability services, are they looking to secure employment, or do they secure employment within one of these priority sector areas? And if not, maybe you start to analyse why that is. And again, is it back to awareness or availability of local opportunity? So I think it's something that we're keen that we better understand, really, if that's going to be an area of focus going forward.
Yeah, and just on that, I just mentioned the creative. It is an area that we're now focusing on through a procurement exercise, so we will hopefully start to see more marketing and that creative sector more, open in the open within the local authority, within to Torfaen residents, of the opportunities that are available within the creative sector. A lot of the jobs within the creative sector, though, aren't necessarily on the doorstep, so there's that, a lot of them are in Cardiff or up in Bridgend. So it is trying to deal with the barriers around going into that that sector as well. I mean, I mentioned the childcare and hospitality, retail and tourism. They are areas that a lot of our residents currently do work in. But I think, as we spoke earlier, we do need to do more around the growth opportunities or the skills development within those areas. Green skills that Beth mentioned earlier is, we're hoping within the next month that we're going to be having some opportunities available which will hit the green skills agenda, especially around doing a piece at the moment, as an example, with Colleague Gwent, where we know that the electrical cars is obviously going to, that's the way that the world is going. So we're looking at supporting 20 to 30 local businesses, local garages, to actually upskill their current workforce, to be able to give them the qualification to work on the EV cars, which hits that green skills and that carbon agenda. So we're definitely going in the right direction, but there is a lot more good work that I think we can do, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Question 14 by Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. Staying around 4.7.8, given the increasing importance of digital skills in the workforce, how is the Council integrating digital literacy and advanced ICT training into its employer programmes to ensure residents can compete in emerging industries?
Yeah, so digital skills is something that we incorporate into all of our provision. So through the adult community learning provision that I also manage, we've got about 12 to 15 digital skills courses that are available to residents at the moment. As part of the career development programme within the local authority, there's an area that we're developing to make sure that people have got the correct level of digital skills to be able to, to navigate the IT world. We're doing a lot out in community groups at the moment to upskill our community groups and to support people to be more digitally savvy so that they can access the Connect Torfaen platform to see what's going on in their community. Our digital skills courses and our ICT courses, we could probably run 10 times over. We've just got a bit of a lack of tutors at the moment. But our digital skills courses and the provision that we've got is available in all of our communities. We've also got a digital loan scheme as well. So not only do we give people the digital skills, if access to the devices to continue practicing at home is an issue and a barrier, and the internet is as well, then we've got a device loan scheme that they can tap into through Torfaen Works and through adult community learning. So it's not just providing them with the training, it's also giving them the infrastructure to continue their learning at home, out of the learning environment. So far we've given 53 devices to residents.
Which community groups are you visiting?
So this is being run through TVA, through our Connecting Torfaen platform. So they're currently working with Garn Second Partnership. There's community groups. I can give you a list of the ones that they're currently engaging in. So with that agenda, they are looking at going in. We want more people to use the Connect platform. So the team are actually going in, supporting people to update or create their profile within Connect Torfaen, add all their details, keep updating it so that the information on the Connect platform is always up to date. So they're actually having the digital skills covering all of the content around that. They then get access to a laptop to be able to continue to update it, but we also give them an iPad for their community centre, which the residents can come in and find out what's going on in their area. We've only just started rolling it out, but I think we've gone to 7 community centres. CCYP are involved, but I can get you a complete list of where we are, but if it's something you're interested in for your community, then give me a shout and I can put you in touch with the relevant officer within TVA. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the last question on data performance, question 15. Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this sort of relates to something that you've just mentioned there of not having enough digital skills tutors. It's mentioned in 6.1.1 of the report that there was an underspend that can be attributed to delayed recruitment. So has there been any difficulty with recruitment into the teams? And if so, what have been the barriers and issues experienced?
So in terms of the underspend, I think primarily that was a delay to sort of being able to mobilise the recruitment as opposed to specific challenges. By and large, we've got a team that have either been employed previously on other employability programmes, or we've been able to secure them. There has been some challenges, I think, in some areas, so things like finance compliance type roles have been particularly challenging, financial in particular, to recruit to support the programmes. But overall, I think our recruitment in this space has been quite strong. But Ange might want to.
Yeah, the recruitment for the Shared Prosper for the Torfaen Works staff has been quite consistent. Like Beth said, a lot of them rolled forward and remained in employment from the EU funding that we had. The digital skills tutors is linked to adult community learning. All local authorities across the Gwent ACL partnership have seen a recruitment issue with digital skills tutors. We've done a lot of recruitment campaigns, so we are lucky that we've got about 8 digital skills tutors now, and we only had 3 probably the last academic year. But it's something that we're always trying to recruit into, because we know that our digital skills courses are very, very high in demand. But in terms of recruitment for Shared Prosperity for Torfaen Works, like Beth said, it's only certain posts that we've had struggle recruiting to, but thankfully we're fully staffed now.
Thanks for that additional information.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the first section, which was the data performance monitoring. Members, would you like to put forward any recommendations at this point on the service provision, please? Councillor Horler?
I think that the idea of taking on higher rating courses within Torfaen would be beneficial. So looking at the 4s, the 3s and the 4s, and I appreciate we probably won't go into the 5s, but many years ago I was in the same situation as a lot of your colleagues are within the environment, and I actually took those higher courses to get to where I wanted to be at the time. So if there is one big recommendation, is that we need to be able to offer our residents those services of the 3s and the 4s, so they can continue with their employability and go further than just 2 and 3.
And I think just to I completely agree. I think it's probably just to sort of make that distinction as well, that in some cases it won't necessarily be us that will deliver. The critical bit will be about our role in that progression and the pathway to ensure those opportunities do exist. And I think probably just to add to that as well is ensuring then that we have got a strong employment offer, that we are attractive to people, because that is what we're seeing in sort of core professional and skills sectors, is we are losing workforce. They are going to sort of higher paid jobs elsewhere, etc. So part of us, what we need to be thinking about is how do we retain our local talent as well within our local businesses. So again, the role of the Economic Forum and working with them is another opportunity.
Sorry, and just on that, it is something that we have done. Just to give you 2 examples, we work internally with our Flying Start team and also with the wider childcare sector and the schools who were struggling to recruit level 3 in childcare learning and development qualifications and level 3 teaching assistants. We provided the level 2 through as a community learning, but we didn't have the tutor to enable us to deliver the level 3, so we approached the college, but the college now deliver that course for us, for Torfaen residents, but in Torfaen. So we're bringing the provision from the college into local areas, and very similar with one of our counselling courses that we run through as a community learning. The demand for counselling courses is really high. We're the only local authority now in this vicinity that are delivering the level 3 qualification. Our learners wanted to progress to level 4. We approached the college, and the college now offer that level 4 provision for them. So we are doing it. The work is being done, but agree that we do need to do it in different places as well.
I kind of talk from experience. 20-odd years ago, I was in the same situation as a lot of people in our communities are, and there were people that were going to these courses that were obviously more clever than level 1 and level 2, and the progression of where they were going was less than the people that were having lower qualifications. So I really would like this recommended, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just to add on that, I think it brings us back to the place-based as well. If we can bring it to the places within the local areas as well, I think that will get more traction from residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Horler. We move on now to data performance monitoring. Takes us to question 16. and invite Councillor David Williams, please.
I keep forgetting the microphone. Yeah, so programme delivery has been primarily centred on young people, NEET. So it was really just asking what the trend has been here. Is it getting better or worse? Particularly if you've seen any difference since COVID?
So I think probably the officer that can best answer that is not here. So Gareth, over in education, is the one that sort of manages the NEET programme. I think we did see an increase in our numbers following COVID. I think they have, and I would rather draw on and get some accurate data for you, but I think that position has stabilised. And you know, the work that the team do to sort of find those opportunities of strengthening, like we said, all of the examples like the cafe, etc., working with agencies. So I think it's a most stabilised position, but we can get that detail for you in terms of a breakdown, so you've got that available.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 17, invite Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've already covered some of this question, so I'll amend it slightly. Looking at the employability drop-ins and work clubs currently taking place across numerous venues, you've offered us information about where those venues are. And again, it comes back to evaluation. So how are we evaluating the people accessing those drop-in sessions? Numbers may not actually sort of demonstrate the need in the area. A lack of sort of engagement might actually demonstrate more of a need for outreach in the area. So have you got sort of ideas on how we can be evaluating where those drop-in centres are, so that we've got evidence that they're best placed to address the needs in the community?
Yeah, thanks. We monitor attendance weekly in terms of footfall and the characteristics of people that are attending as well. But you're right, in one area, we knew that there was kind of need because of the high levels of unemployment and economic activity, and we set up some provision within the area, and literally nobody was attending, but we knew it was an area of need. So the team literally persevered and persevered and persevered, changed the way in which they were approaching the community, changed the different type of activities. And now, thankfully, it's in Forgeside. That community is engaging with us quite well, but it took a good 6 to 8 months. But all of these are the current ones. This has probably changed over the last 8 months as well, because we had work clubs or drop-ins in other areas that we were literally, it wasn't the right place for us to be. So we always evaluate and look at the effectiveness on them on a monthly basis because of the attendance registers, and we'll be reactive to the changes. But it isn't as simple as footfall coming through. It is that constant, are we offering the right activity for this community? So even though there are drop-ins there in all of those communities, the activity would look completely different depending on the audience within that community. Does that help?
Yeah, that's very helpful. If I could just come back very briefly, that might be an area where members could be sort of helpful to get involved. It may just be that the location that you're using is difficult for people to access. We may have local knowledge that might be able to help there.
I agree, Councillor Clarkson, and I think it goes beyond that, isn't it? There's the role of the members, but when we talk about that place-based approach with the community councils, the town councils, and a number of those organisations that are actually host us as an employment team, it's about that local knowledge, isn't it? That tacit information that tells, you know, the people who know your residents the best, and feeding that through to the team. And I think that can only be strengthened as we go through it with that community's approach that we're looking to embed.
Okay, thank you. Move on to question 18. Councillor Nick Hawler, please.
This is about 4.3.5, to support young people, including training providing in-house, bike maintenance, arts, DJing, allotment, horticulture, and food and volunteering, including the cafe, using our own staff. How is the data monitored, reported via education or through employability?
So from a funding SPF perspective, we will capture that data through the compliance team within Angie's world. In terms of how that gets reported into education, I think that would be one for Gareth. We'd need to pick up with him in terms of how that gets reported on that side of it, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 19, we go back to Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hopefully a very quick one. Table 2 sets out participation and enrolment. Do we also monitor and evaluate dropout rates and the reasons for such?
We do, but probably not on the scale that we present the enrolment data. It's quite hard because we could, like I said, because it's a voluntary programme, somebody might drop out and then re-engage with us a couple of months later. So it's at that moment in time, I guess. We do look at the reasons why people withdraw from programme. Hopefully they no longer need our support because they're reporting a positive outcome. But no, I think that's something that does need to be explored in more detail.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Clarkson, question 20, please.
Thank you, Chair. 4.51 of the report highlights work has been undertaken to increase the number of females engaging on programmes, including targeted interventions to help this cohort overcome the specific barriers they may be facing. So what the information we'd like is, can you provide some examples of these targeted interventions? Have we identified any common themes in terms of barriers faced by females or any other issues with engaging on programmes?
Yeah, certainly. So we work with Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, to support lone parents within Torfaen. There were lots of changes around the welfare system in terms of when lone parents' benefits would change and they had to start seeking employment. So we did a lot of targeted work with referrals, drop-in centres within DWP specifically for that cohort. And I don't think it'll come as any surprise. Childcare was a huge barrier, as well as confidence and self-esteem, and the unknown, the aspirations around for the lone parents as well. So on the back of that, we did targeted group work or one-to-one work, where they were allocated their own employment progression coach who kind of had a background in supporting female lone parents. The interventions took a lot longer because there was a lot of other things to consider. It was the childcare, it was the finances, it was housing. It wasn't just the one thing that they had to get back into work because their benefits were changing. It was the whole wraparound of support that they actually needed. So we saw an increase in that cohort, predominantly because of the work that we were doing with lone parents within DWP in Cwmbran and Pontypool, and there is a higher majority of female lone parents than there are male lone parents.
Yeah, if I could just briefly come back to it, that would seem to be an area where we could target, where children who are getting to an age where they can go into other schools, other sort of care sort of situations. It's predominantly the younger sort of children that keeping parents at home and mothers at home. My own experience is that once children get up into late primary or up into comprehensive, parents are wanting to go back into work then. So it could be some work around targeting, joining in with schools at that point.
Yeah, we've got quite a big, vast family learning programme as well that we run in schools. It's offered to all primary schools and some secondary schools as well. We don't have, I think we're in about 15 schools at the moment within Torfaen, so we are doing some targeted intervention, but it's not specifically for lone parents. It's open to any of the schools, but hopefully we will engage people through the family learning and into the Torfaen Works programme as a result of that intervention.
That's great. Okay. Good to hear. Thank you very much.
problems.
And I think just an extension of that and back to the conversation piece around sort of aspirations as well, it's important that we pick that conversation up within schools. If we are supporting children, young people, we know there is, you know, a huge gap in terms of girls who choose certain vocations, certain occupations in later life, sort of very male, traditionally orientated ones. So again, it's how we change that narrative and encourage more girls to aspire to some of those roles going forward, which hopefully helps them with some of those challenges that we currently face in terms of women in the workplace.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 21, Councillor David Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is picking up at 4.53 and 4.54. A high percentage of economically inactive are on long-term sick, and the majority of those don't want to have a job, according to the data. So it's really, how are people surveyed to get this data, and is there any exploration as to whether such people may be interested in volunteering activities? People may want to contribute to their community, but not necessarily have a job.
Sorry, did you repeat the first part? Was it about where the data is from?
Yes, how people are surveyed to get the data. It seems very detailed to sort of say those numbers. So how do you get it? They're often hard to reach.
That information in that table is taken from NOMIS, which is labour market and census information. So it's only as accurate as the data that is presented to us, I guess. But in terms of the people that are economically inactive are those that are obviously students looking after temporary homes, not seeking work. But as Beth alluded to, there is a big piece of work to try and change the mindsets of people that are saying that actually they don't want to work. And the changes that we're going to be seeing over the next, well, now really, people that are on, and within the next 12 months probably, that are on sickness-related benefits who are going to be made to work. There is a huge piece of work, I think, to do, depending on the next round of funding, about changing those mindsets for people to do not want a job to actually, yes, I do want a job. And it's not going to be an easy task, especially for people who have been claiming health-related benefits for a long time and haven't been in the workplace for a while. But yeah, I think a starting point for a lot of those people will be engaging in some of the health and wellbeing activity that we've got as that first step into, social interactions with people, with a view then that, for some people, job is never going to be a reality for them, unfortunately, but volunteering possibly, hopefully, would be a positive outcome for them.
And I guess what the data doesn't tell you, isn't it, is the reason why they don't want a job, isn't it? So they may make the statement, but actually there may be fundamental reasons why they think they don't want it, isn't it? And actually breaking down some of those barriers would change that mindset anyway. So I think that's quite a vague statement in terms of that data set that, yeah, doesn't give us the detail for some of the reasons that sit behind some of that.
I think you captured the point there.
Okay, thank you. Question 22, Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. Staying on the table there on 4.53, the table 4 below highlights that the percentage of residents who are economically inactive as a result of being long-term sick is significantly higher at 48.7%. With 48.7% of economically inactive residents in Torfaen being on long-term sick, what target measures are in place to address the specific health challenges and barriers to employment for this group? And are we working with our partners in health to determine why the average considerably outstrips the Welsh and UK averages?
So in terms of those that are on long-term sick or reporting a health condition, we've got an extensive health and wellbeing offer, and I think the officers who came to Panteg saw just a snapshot of that. We work quite closely with a lot of our partners who are working directly with those people that are on long-term sick. And the majority of them will have a work coach within Job Centre Plus because they will be on employment support allowance, the old DSA, or have a disability advisor. So we do get direct referrals into our services from them. And what we're collating now is evidence of the people that are actually being referred to us. What are their health conditions? So we can see that we then need to tailor our health and well-being support to match what we're being presented with. So prior, probably 12 months ago, 15 months ago, our health and well-being provision would have looked a lot different. But now, because we know that there's more fibromyalgia, there's a lot more anxiety, mental health, weight management issues that people are being referred to us for, our offer of health and wellbeing provision has changed a lot because we're kind of adapting. In terms of the health board, we work quite closely with the health board. We've got them on as one of our subcontractors for multiply provision at the moment because they're dealing with the weight management issues and diabetes that is quite high within the local authority. But from a Torfaen Works perspective, our referrals into our health and wellbeing provision comes from a breadth, not just Job Centre Plus, but from Mind, so mental health practitioners, Tallygarn, as that kind of first step sometimes back into social interaction.
And I guess there is something, we've obviously got a group of people who are long-term sick and have been that for some time. I guess part of the conversation we're having around early intervention prevention is how do we stop that from escalating further, because that's the concern, isn't it, that we don't intervene or we don't put the interventions in early enough. So that's a big piece of work that we're working, not just as an authority, but across all of our partners, including health, is how do we provide the right intervention earlier in the process? How much of that can be delivered from within the community settings? We talk about mental health and well-being. There's breadth of provision already there in terms of, local walking groups, isn't it, men's health initiatives. And it's almost how do you start changing that narrative so actually the breadth of support is in at that earliest opportunity, because obviously the further into the system they go, the more that creates pressure in terms of services, etc. So I think it's something around how do we deal with the current cohort, but how do we actually decrease the numbers over time that are flowing in at that higher end of demand.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horner.
So we talk about long-term sick, and because they don't want to work and everything else. From the employer's point of view, how much intervention are you having with those employers within the communities to be able to help those people get back into employment?
See, our employment engagement officers, they've been working within the local authority for a number of years now, so our employer base is quite vast. They will have conversations and advocate on behalf of somebody. So plus on top of that, we will draw down funding from Access to Work. So if we place somebody with an employer and they know they've got additional learning needs, or they know that they've got workplace health conditions that actually they need some adaptations for in the workplace, we're kind of that conduit to make sure that that happens. We've done it for Matalan. We had extra alarms installed within Matalan because there was a lady there who was hard of hearing. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do in terms of matching the participant to the right job, but with the right employer who has got the workforce and has got the capability to be able to deal with somebody who has got either additional learning needs or health conditions. Also, we work with these disability confident employers as well that they sign up to through GovUK. So we know the disability confident employers that are signed up to that pledge within the Torfaen area and the wider local authorities. So that's another point of call for us as well. And sometimes we have participants who have got their mind set on working for a particular employer within in retail. So we will always approach those where we think possible and try and put those workplace adaptations in place as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Call Councillor David Thomas back in.
It's only quick, Chair. You just mentioned employer engagement officers. How many employer engagement officers do we have?
We employ 4 through Torfaen Works. Oh no, sorry, 6. 6, yeah. They've all got their own specialities in a way. So some of them are targeted with. We've got one lady, Goldfield. She's, Goldfield, yeah. Is that good or bad? Yeah. She's got a great relationship with local employers and within the retail sector within Cwmbran. We've got a hub now in Cumbrian Town Centre, in the library. Employers will come in and see Goldfield from within the town centre if they're looking for if they're looking to fill a vacancy. So we've built up that employer relationship where they don't go to job centre anymore. They don't advertise the job in some instances. They will come to the employment engagement team within Torfaen Works and we'll fill that vacancy for them. It becomes like a hidden vacancy. So the participants of Torfaen Works are actually getting a better deal, I suppose, because they have access to all of that support plus some of these hidden vacancies. But yeah, we've got 6.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Move on to question 23. Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm mindful of time and I'm happy that this question has been answered previously, so I'm happy to pass over.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Councillor Clarkson. So go on to question 24, which is the final question in this section. Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. What metric does the Council use to track the success and sustainability of job placements, especially for participants who have secured employment? And is there follow-up to access if they remain employed after 6 months or more?
So in terms of the sustainability, I think that's something we've introduced. I think we recognise that when we have external funding, quite often the activities around that immediacy, and what it wasn't picking up was that sustainability. So that's something we've started to introduce within the performance measures. Is that person still employed 6 months after leaving the programme? Again, I think there's further opportunity to strengthen that as well. If we're providing qualifications, has that led to or supported a progression within employment within 6 months, etc.? And I think that's critical, because otherwise we could have plenty of good activity outcomes in terms of, yes, somebody secured a job, but that could be a seasonal piece of work which actually offers less sustainability than a long-term job. So it's definitely a space that we're strengthening and we've started to do. What was the second part? Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
Is there a follow-up to the access if they remain employed after 6 months or more?
In terms of access to the programme, and there would be potentially, wouldn't there, from an upskilling and work perspective?
Yeah. I think the beauty of Torfaen Works is somebody can enter the programme unemployed and receive an array of support, and once they go into employment, they can still access all of that support as well. So it is true, whatever your employment situation, Torfaen Works can help is kind of our slogan. After 6 months, probably not, but that's probably down to resources as well and the amount of participants and support that we have on offer. In an ideal world, yes, we'd keep tracking whether it's something we can resource going forward after the 6 months is another question really. But yeah, that 6 month follow-up period is something we're in the midst of doing now.
And I guess with time, there's one thing you could do is track that re-entry into system, isn't it? So you could do that 6 month check-in. You then assume that individual is, on its way and we'll never see them again. But if they re-enter, how do we can capture that really in terms of an identification? Yeah. So that's something we could take away.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It brings us to the end of the deep performance monitoring questions. I'd like to ask members, would you like to put forward any recommendations at this point, please? Councillor David Williams?
I think I'd simply pick up on that last point, which is actually there's a benefit in tracking re-entry, so we know how the progress of individuals going through the programme is. So I think that's a valid and useful recommendation for us to make.
Okay, thank you for that. Go on to the final bit of questioning now is on the funding and resources. Question 25.
Yeah, you've got one on screen. Councillor Clarkson wanted to ask a question.
I'll come back in at the end and make my recommendations then. I'm mindful of time and we've got questions to get through. So I'm happy to come back in at the end.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. But didn't see no raised hand, sorry, so didn't know that you had an impending question. Okay, so we move on.
Yeah, it was up, but I'm happy to take it down.
Oh, right, okay. My apologies for not noticing that. Question 25 is the Torvine Works is made up of projects funded by either UK or Welsh Government. Is funding dependent on outcomes?
There are outcomes that we need to track, so we will have targets in place against the funding. And then, I mean, traditionally the funding is awarded and we deliver the outcomes. If we are, for example, underrepresented on certain targets or outcomes, then there's usually a conversation with the funders to understand why that is, and there is usually a reprofiling that can happen. So it could be that actually the individuals are not there for us to engage with, and therefore we might be profiled to say, actually, we'll focus on a different area based on need and demand. So generally, the funding award is what it is, and then we work with funders throughout against our original targets and profile in terms of where we are with delivery.
Okay, thank you. Question 26, Councillor David Williams, please.
I think this may have been covered. It's very quick and short, which was at 6.11. There's mention of the Shared Prosperity Fund underspend due to late recruitment. So it's just checking that that's been used, or could it have been rolled forward?
Yeah, the recruitment, we're now fully staffed, thankfully. There was some site underspend that's been reprofiled across the remainder of the, to spend on other areas, mainly provision and development of the programme.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 27, Councillor Nick Horner, please.
I think this question underpins the dialogue that we've had this morning. It's the second type of question that I've asked in this chamber in the last week and a bit. It's about 6.12. Funding for the Shared Prosperity funding is currently due to end in March of 25, with no current indications on whether a subsequent funding programme to support employment and skills will be made available. Current Welsh Government funding for the CFW Plus programme also runs out in March. So my question is, what contingency plans are being made should this funding cease, and what would be the impact to reduce funding on the service provision?
I think there is always a challenge, isn't it, with many of our services that are sort of non-statutory in terms of our dependency on external funding. Historically, we've always had an indication of a future programme coming forward. Obviously, we're not as cited in terms of SPF, in terms of what that may look like. Welsh Government, I think there are probably more advanced conversations there in terms of potential funding and continuation, though we can never offer that with certainty until an offer letter lands, so we'll caveat that. We are obviously looking then internally about, what could a core provision look like, and we'll continue to explore any other funding opportunities that come forward. Obviously, with so many changes happening within the employability landscape, we suspect that if there will be a provision, or we would hope that there would be an element of funding. I think so much of it is tied up in the funding review, so I think we're quite restricted in terms of what we can offer by way of certainty. Obviously, if the funding reduces, scale of programme needs to respond accordingly, but I would say as an authority, I think we are committed to the agenda around employability and skills, so I hope that we will be able to have an offer. And again, then that for me is where strengthening relationships with partners and services become even more important, so that we can maximise what we can deliver to residents collectively, as opposed to working in isolation, where perhaps then we risk that duplication.
So working with partners will help you deliver more. So that working is really important currently. I
think if we can work with partners effectively, then that always gives us the opportunity to do more. And when I talk about partners, I think that's other services within the sector, but I also think that extends into our community provision, working with our community groups, all of the things that we spoke about, that actually, sometimes happens, and sometimes we step into spaces we don't need to either. So I think Partnership is critical, and actually I think you can get a better offer if everybody is around that table. You know, we talk about businesses as well. I think that's another example where we can strengthen offer.
Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us on to question 28. And Councillor Linda Clarkson, please.
Yeah, I think some of this has already been discussed. My question was going to be around service development. Should funding be of a more positive nature after October and 2025, March 2025? I think we've already sort of covered a lot of those areas of where service needs to develop and grow. But just ask, have you got any sort of specific thoughts on that?
I think for me, I think we probably covered it within the report in terms of where we've got opportunity to grow and strengthen on the existing offer. I think if funding is forthcoming, I think there is still an opportunity for us to look at how we deliver and who we deliver with. You know, I think it's that risk of not standing still or to just continue to do what we've always done. I think that, you know, constant reflection, looking at performance data, isn't it? Looking at the role of the community, looking at what we've done that's worked most effectively should be an important consideration. Even if there is a continuation of funding, it's kind of what should the offer look like and how do we best deliver that collectively.
Yeah, totally agreed. Thank you for that answer. I'm sure some of our recommendations will reflect that as well. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Clarkson, did you want to come back on a question when I miss your hand, please?
No, it was a recommendation that
Okay.
I had to give at that point. So I'm happy to give it when we reconvene after the officers have left, just mindful of the time.
Okay, appreciate that. Just like to go back then to Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I just need to nip back to a question. I should have asked it earlier, really, but curiosity is getting the better of me, I'm afraid. This question is a question that Councillor Haller asked. The support for young people also includes training provided in-house, and you've got DJing. I was quite a big DJ, or I still am actually, but who does that? Who's doing that training?
So that's provided up in Changing Gears. So if you're aware of Changing Gears in Griffstown where they sell the bikes. So that provision is kind of developed as a way of trying to engage NEETs, you know, or people that the children not engaged in school. All of that provision that is mentioned in there, the DJing, the arts and crafts and things, it's all got essential skills embedded into it. So they might be learning DJing as a skill, but they're also learning digital skills, and they're also learning essential communication and numeracy as well. So it's kind of all the literacy and numeracy and the digital skills is embedded into a subject which they are enjoying. I mean, if you're more than welcome to go up there. They've got DJ decks and everything in there. It's really, really good.
I'm actually, if you Google it, I am actually quite a big name DJ, and I've made quite a lot of money. And it is actually a good career. So
yeah,
I just wondered if they were learning that as a career. You know,
yes, yeah.
You know, I was on £500 an hour in mine, so
yeah.
you know, you can make a lot of money out of it.
Yeah. It's been a really good hook, really, to engage children who are not engaging in mainstream education, but they're also still learning the essential skills that go alongside it, same with the bike maintenance. But yeah, by all means, contact Gareth Jones, go up and have a look, because he's got a really good setup up there.
I think as well, it just provides opportunities back to what we were talking about, isn't it? Not all children are going to be academic, some of that is vocational. It's about that breadth of opportunity, and you can make a career from something you enjoy. And I think sometimes people are encouraged down a very academic route that doesn't fulfil. You know, I think last week on the Economic Forum, the other thing we talked about was doing something you love. And actually then you can forge a career rather than, you know, trudging through the 9 to 5. So, and I think there probably is opportunity, and Gareth would probably welcome that conversation about how you draw business in.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That brings us to the end of the funding and resources section. Would members like to put any recommendations forward at this point, please? Or not? No. All good? Okay. I would very much like to thank Beth and Angela, our officers, for this morning, and obviously our exec member, Councillor Joanne Gordon. Thank you very much for your time and excellent answers. Answering the questions this morning. I don't know if you'd like to make any comments before you leave the meeting this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say quickly what a very long list of questions, but really good questions. You clearly spent, considerable time making sure you come up with the right questions so that your scrutiny is going to be really good, and I look forward to your recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and for myself, just to say thank you and taking the time to come and visit some of the activity. But if you want to come and visit any of it again, or would like to see more of our activities in a bit more detail, like the DJing and things, then please reach out, because there's a lot going on, and I realise we only had a snippet of time to show you the Poundteg House. But yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a bit more about what we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and still being webcast. Can I refer you now to the scrutiny activity and invite you to offer your recommendations? I'd like to hand over to Rebecca now, who will formulate the recommendations with the members.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can remind members of the scrutiny activity undertaken today. So in addressing the key question, to what extent are focused, targeted skills programmes contributing positively to employability and skills within the borough, the Adults and Communities ONS Committee is invited to consider the report, to review the performance, outcomes and outputs of the Employability and Skills Service, and to determine whether focused, targeted skills programmes contribute positively to improving employability and skills within the borough, and therefore provide recommendations to the executive member. So can I open it up to members to put forward your recommendations? Obviously, throughout discussions, Councillor Horner, there was the one that you put forward, so I have noted that, and that was with regards to the level 3 and level 4 qualifications and a greater priority, and the role in progression, offering that place-based employment offer. So I hand over to members then.
Okay, members, we'll go Councillor Clarkson, then Councillor Evans, and then Councillor Thomas, please. So, Councillor Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first recommendation I'd look to put forward is regarding data breakdown, and it's that demographic info 20+, which we've mentioned in a number of the questions. And I'd like to recommendation that, if possible, we could break it down to ages 20 to 30, 30 to 55, and then 55 and above. That would give us a greater understanding, or maybe even more broken down than that. That would give us a greater understanding of the need and how to tailor towards those individual age groups.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Evans, please.
Thanks, Chair. I got two. I don't know whether it's more, rather than it being a questionnaire. My concern is if the funding is reduced, what limitations are going to put on to supporting the users, because they did mention that some people don't complete the course. They may come back in 6 months later. But the problem is, if the funding is being cut, what restrictions and how are they going to, protect the course services of that particular function? I mean, if the money is cut, then you've got to cut back on what you're providing. So, that covers two parts of the scrutiny question. So, that's my concern with the funding.
Okay, so Councillor Evans, are you happy that I note that in the comments rather than there's not a recommendation within that? So
yeah, that's what I said. It's more of a concern, more than a recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor David Thomas, please.
Thanks, Jay. Just going to the question 11, because when I asked this question to Bethan, she seemed quite concerned about it as well, about better understanding of how this progression is. So, what did she? Can you remind me, Beck? What did she seemed quite concerned about it herself, didn't she?
So she mentioned they haven't done an extensive amount of work on that tracking, and they do need to have a better understanding of learner progression pathways.
Can we
tie that into the recommendation.
Yeah, is that possible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Williams, please.
Yes, thank you. I think if this ties into a little bit to the question I asked about adjustments, is there perhaps a recommendation about ensuring that the employability team work with disability organisations and such as Torvine Access Forum to promote the support that's available for people with disability so as to encourage that take-up? I think it's fairly tight. So
Councillor Clarkson, please.
Yes, I'd like to consider making a recommendation to support the team in expanding their interactions with schools, to look at careers at a much earlier stage and to make it more of a seamless. That seems like a good preventative measure for me, and if we are in a position where everything's got to be evidence-based and funding could be tighter, I'd like to support them in sort of doing that piece of work. I'd also like to sort of think about whether or not this would be a good one to go to members' seminar at some time, maybe not this year, but in the next financial year, because it's such a huge area that comes underneath the banner of Torvine Works, and other members could really benefit from information about this and their input. As we've shown today, we put a lot of questions forward, a lot of input, so some more interesting ideas and sort of collaboration with members could be sought, and that it, being such a new service, that it come back to scrutiny, possibly early 25-26.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. So obviously at the end of the scrutiny year you will receive the update on your recommendation, so some of that information will be tied up in that, and then obviously as a seminar you're entitled to refer that to a seminar as a committee as well. So I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor David Thomas, please.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just to add on to what Councillor Clarkson was saying then about schools, can we make sure that we do say primary and secondary, so it's both from the tied in?
Okay, Councillor Williams.
yeah, I think what I'd noted there was, support for schools in looking at arranging work placements. It aligns to that, but, it's a specific element.
Yeah, I totally agree.
There was also the one I noted, I think, Councillor Thomas, arising from your question about the, and then Councillor Williams raised its recommendation about the benefit of tracking re-entry into the programme after a period of time.
Yes, sure.
Sorry, Councillor.
No, it's okay. I think I've got a couple. 21 and 22 talks about employability and the amounts of people that are out of work for long term. Could we put some recommendation on how we could actually work with those people to actually work harder with those people to actually get those people back into employment? Is that something we could ask? Sorry, it's about the 48.7 people that are not employed within our communities, and surely we would be more economically viable if everybody was actually doing some form of work, either through volunteering or being able to get back into employment. Hence the question about asking about the employability of employers being employed. And I think we need to be able to push that a little bit more so we can get that massive figure, 48.7 figure, reduced. I really do think that's important. And the other one was basically about the funding. We talked about the potential funding that potentially might be lost in March, and we don't seem to see any physical evidence of what potentially they've got in place to be able to put this back into another model if this funding doesn't happen. So is there something about asking for what plans they really do have to move it forward, what actions they are placing now for that? It's a question.
Yes,
is it a
it's
question
or is it waiting obviously to the month when they have that financial? So perhaps instead, either in the comments or a recommendation that should they be made aware of significant funding cuts that plans are brought back to committee, then should there be any significant concerns?
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Williams, please.
I think, the history is that this sort of thing is funded annually, so therefore it's happened many times, so therefore there's an assumption that it will tend to continue. Just two little points, really. One was the bit about the question that was asked at number 9, which you asked, Dave, which was about examples of local employers shaping training. I would suggest that, if they have got some case studies, that would be quite helpful to be able to share, to include some of that, because we didn't really get the detail of some of the employees, and I think that might be quite helpful. That's the first one. And the second one was perhaps also a little more information, perhaps promoting the digital literacy, because we learned a bit more, didn't we, about, I didn't know anything about the loan scheme, for example, so I think, promoting that would be, through different avenues, including TVA, would be useful to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So I'll add that promoting the digital literacy in the loan scheme as a recommendation, but if it's okay, I'll pop the case studies as an action point so I can get those back to members on the action sheet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, members, for those recommendations. So if I just quickly run through the action points, there was a couple of action points, just to remind you of those that were raised. So there was the list of community groups that are working with a digital skills programme. Councillor Thomas, you asked for that information, so Angela offered to get that for committee, so I'll provide that when it's available. Also, there is the NEAT data. Councillor Williams, Beth did say that they would get that information and circulate it as well. I think that was it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, one more, Councillor Williams.
I don't know if it's a recommendation or not, but I just wondered if they seem to indicate there was a shortage of digital skills tutors, so I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done to try and work with partners to perhaps actually access it. I'm partly thinking of providing employment, if I'm honest, of people coming back into the workforce. Is that an opportunity?
Okay, thank you very much. Members, agenda item 7 now is a consideration of item for next meeting. Rebecca, can you please take members through this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just quickly draw your attention to the appendix of this report. So it sets out the basket of items that you selected at Visioning. So at the time of Visioning, the item scheduled for the next meeting was digital services for the 14th of November meeting. Just to point out, there were 2 items on the Exec Forward Work Plan, which was Sports and Leisure Strategy and the Cumbrae Placemaking Plan, both of which you considered at Visioning but didn't prioritise those at the time. And then there have been no audit referrals that are applicable to this committee within this time period. So are members still happy that digital services is the item for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. And agenda item 8, date of the next meeting will be Thursday, the 14th of November at 4 p.m. All it remains me to do is thank everyone for attendance and your valuable contributions. There were some really good questions here today. So just thank you very much all, and just leaving me to close the meeting. Okay, thanks all.
Thank you.